Dive into this newscast with all the latest coming in on Canada's elections, which is our top focus this hour, as polling has closed in Canada and counting has begun in parts of the country. Sitting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken an early lead. Trudeau is political royalty and is often called the Prince Charming of Canadian politics. He is indeed one of the last progressive leaders still in power, at least for the time being. Now, several polls have predicted that Trudeau will form the minority government. Trudeau's main rival is Conservative leader Andrew Scheer, a legislator since he was 25 years old and a former speaker in the lower house of the legislature. Scheer is no novice when it comes to Canadian politics. Then there's Jagmeet Singh, the first man of Indian origin to lead a major political party in Canada, but his sympathy for Khalistani elements continues to be a sticking point for many. Jagmeet Singh's presence is expected to complicate the results. Singh is projected to come in third place behind Trudeau and Scheer. He could be the kingmaker in the event of a fractured mandate. Preliminary results are expected to be put up on the official website of Elections Canada today, but if the vote is very close, then the ballots may be recounted under the supervision of a judge. In case of a fractured mandate, Trudeau will get the first chance to form a government according to Canada's laws. The possibility of Jagmeet Singh supporting Trudeau is higher than him siding with Conservative Party. Trudeau's party got absolute majority back in 2015 in the 338-seat House of Commons.
I'm a proud Canadian, and that's why I love this country, and I'm the only leader on this stage who wants to have a discussion about the level of immigration. Should come as no surprise.
For more details, let's quickly go across for a ground report to Rachel Curran, a Senior Associate Harper and Associates and former Director of Policy to former Prime Minister Harper is joining us right now from Toronto. A very warm welcome to you, Rachel. Rachel, from Trudeau to Andrew Scheer to Jagmeet Singh, there are a host of candidates which are in the running. Which one seems to be resonating with the viewers at this moment?
Well, that's a good question. So the answer is really none of them. Voters here have not been particularly impressed with any of the choices on offer. So Trudeau looks like he will remain on as Prime Minister, but in charge of a minority government. So his grip on power will be weakened. Mr. Scheer will not get to form government. And Mr. Singh looks like he will lose seats for the NDP overall. So in fact, none of them are performing very well in this election, although it's sort of widely accepted that Mr. Singh actually ran the best campaign.
All right, so we can clearly expect a fractured mandate. What happens? You must run our viewers through the procedures which will take place if there is a fractured mandate.
Yeah, so in the case of a minority, if no one party gets a majority of seats, the incumbent Prime Minister, that's Mr. Trudeau, gets to approach Parliament. He gets to test his mandate before Parliament and to say, you know, I can govern, and I can govern with a coalition, whether it's formal or informal, and he gets to test the confidence of Parliament. So he gets to go before Parliament, there's a vote, and if he survives that vote, then he remains on. If he does not survive that vote, then another leader, Mr. Scheer in this case, could go to the Governor-General and say, I think I can form a governing coalition and I would like to test the confidence of Parliament. So that's how that process works. But it looks at this point like Mr. Trudeau, although he will be the head of a minority, it will be a fairly solid minority. So he will likely be able to govern with the support of the new Democratic Party led by Mr. Singh.
Right. You know, Rachel, I can't help but ask you the question that, you know, for somebody who came with a sweeping majority back in the year 2015, Trudeau has really dimmed his image. What has led to this scenario now that he's finally having to actually consider a situation where he's looking at forming a minority government?
Yeah, it's a big blow. So normally in Canada, if we elect a majority government, that government gets at least 2 terms. So they get at least 8 years. Mr. He's only 4 years into his mandate, and voters have said, we don't trust you with another majority government. We're not happy with the way you're governing. We're not happy with the way that you're representing Canada on the international stage. And certainly his trip to India, which was widely panned here, was very much a part of that assessment. So voters are saying, look, you know, we're going to give you a limited mandate now to maybe continue on with some of the things you've been doing, but we're not willing to give you a majority again. And that is very unusual here.
All right, Rachel, it's not each individual scandal, but the sum of all parts in the last 4 years. Despite the scandals, what is it that could actually help Trudeau to hold on to power?
What could help it? Well, look, at this stage, if he delivers on what he says he's going to do for Canadians, he's promised a lot of things in this election, enhancement to family benefit programs, enhancement to seniors benefits. You know, if he delivers on some of these things, then he will be allowed to govern for a while. But one of the biggest issues with Mr. Trudeau is the fact that Canadians have the sense that he's not a very good representative for Canada internationally, and he's going to have to show that he's a lot more serious as a leader, that he can hold his own with other G7 and G20 leaders. And so far, he hasn't been able to do that. So I think a lot of Canadians will be watching that over the next few months and years. And if Mr. Trudeau does not perform, the end of this minority mandate will be sooner rather than later.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at three major contenders out here, one being Trudeau, the other being Andrew Scheer, and of course the third being Jagmeet Singh. Let's talk about Andrew Scheer. What would it mean for Canada if there's a Conservative government in place?
Well, I'm a Conservative, so I'd love that. But look, the two parties aren't that far apart on a lot of it. Mr. Scheer would, I think, put much more focus on stronger relations with our allies, including India. He's also much more interested in being fiscally responsible, so making sure that the budget here is balanced and that we're not spending more than we're taking in. So there are important differences in that respect. I think his approach to international relations would also be quite different. He would really try and smooth over some of those problems that we've had in the last 4 years.
All right, Rachel, coming up close behind the Conservatives or the Liberals is the Progressive New Democratic Party led by Jagmeet Singh. Should India be concerned if Jagmeet is one of the power players, especially taking into consideration his inclination towards the Khalistan issue?
Yeah, well, look, he was just denied a visa to travel to India. I think it's a real concern. I mean, look, Canada has a big Indian population. We have a big Sikh population. My own mother is Sikh. And the Sikh community here is really divided on those issues. There's I think, a small minority who are sympathetic to more radical tendencies. But Jagmeet Singh has been associated with that small minority. And so that's a real problem for him. It would be very difficult for him, I think, to be a credible leader of Canada. He may hold the balance of power in this parliament, but listen, he's not going to have much to do with international relations, and it's because of his previous positions on issues including Sikh separatism.
All right, so Rachel, it's interesting that we're just getting in some fresh data at this moment, and the Conservatives are taking the lead at 58. Trudeau is behind, of course. The Liberals are at 54. That's actually quite close, but of course, for now, the Conservatives are taking the lead. That brings me to my last question, Rachel, that like Israel, what we can see in Canada, there's a parallel, because we see that a minority government could be, playing a very important role. The king players are, of course, going to be the smaller parties.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not in the same situation as Israel in that we don't have a proportional representation system, so we don't have this plethora of small parties. So we will form a government, whether that's made up of Liberal and NDP, which I think is most likely, or whether it's made up of Conservatives and NDP or Conservatives and a smaller party. We will have a government at the end of this election. The question is how long that government is going to last. Minority governments last sort of on average 18 to 24 months here. So it'll just be a shorter duration. It'll be 1.5 years or 2 years instead of 4 years.
All right, Rachel, thank you so much for bringing us all those latest details. We'll keep a tab on what's happening in Canada and probably keep coming back to you for more and for that precious perspective that you actually shared. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.